Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today?
Good.
I do love that these panels back to back. The first one was, will all roll-ups be ZK? And this one is the end of ZK. So taking possibly the opposite view, but let's start off with a round of introductions if you guys all want to introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Howard. I'm the founder of a L1 called Aleo. Aleo itself is a new blockchain we launched about 6 months ago. The goal for it is to really introduce private smart contracts in the ecosystem. I'm currently the CEO of the labs company called Provable, and we're based in the US.
Hi, my name is Ming. I'm the co-founder and chief scientist of ZKM, where we build a ZK VM based off the MIPS architecture. We call it ZK MIPS. And we also built a Bitcoin rollup called Gold Network. Yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Mamy. I'm the cryptographic lead at Lita Foundation. So we build a ZK VM, but unlike most of the others, we choose to write our own ISA. So no MIPS, no WASM, no RISC-V. It's been a long journey, but it has tremendous advantages in terms of speed.
And I'm Phil. I'm the founder of Cork Protocol. It's a new DeFi primitive that tokenizes risk. Initially launching on mainnet, but hopefully launching on lots of ZK EVMs very soon. I think like the best place to probably start is just to try and get an understanding and assess the landscape of ZK today, ZK rollups, ZK EVMs. I'm curious what each of you think is the landscape, how's it progressing, and where are we going?
I think the landscape is absolutely maturing. I think at least to speak to the previous panel, I would say that ZK is the end game, and I think people recognize that the technology has a lot of potential. Personally, I think this is the year of ZK, and even more so the year of privacy. We just saw some amazing updates from the government side of things in terms of how crypto is going to operate in the US, and I really believe that this is a huge opportunity for us to push the technology now forward in the industry.
Yeah, since we're building a ZK VM, so obviously we'll say ZK is the end game for all games, right? But in terms of market share, I think in Ethereum, like ZK VM came late. Like this year, we'll probably have very competitive pricing and speed for ZK VMs. But I think it's difficult to just take most of the market share from OP rollups and Optimus rollups. But I think from our point of view, I think the end game would be the spill out effect of Ethereum building these ZK rollups technology. So basically, you solved the scalability problem for blockchains, right? So for consensus, it's always going to be slow. So because there's, I call it the speed limit, the speed limit of light for consensus, because you cannot be faster than that speed. And then there's a limit on the scalability. But rollups can be as fast as cheap as it can be. So basically, it will be rollup for every blockchain. And we see that as we build this rollups for Bitcoin, right? And also as a something we built called Entangled Rollup, which is a kind of solution for you can have data center kind of speed and performance, and you have the true consensus security on the layer 1 blockchain. So that's what I see the end game for ZK, that the spill out of Ethereum, right? But for Ethereum, I don't think ZK is never going to take over Optimal Rollup.
So Lagrange, who's sponsoring this panel, told me to have a spicy take on the end of ZK. So I guess he meant FHE and MPC will put all of us out of a job. No, I'm joking. So
I was going to challenge you on that one.
No, I'm into ZK, so we all agree. I think 2025 is quite interesting. So we've seen ZK EVM dying, literally. So Halo 2, which was, I guess, the granddaddy of ZK EVM, sponsored by the Ethereum Foundation, has been archived. But at the same time, I cannot follow all the ZK VM that popped up. You had OpenVM, you had Brevis Pico VM, and I heard that there are some more that are being created. And it's maturing also. So 2024 was quite famous for I guess, crypto Twitter wars around benchmarks. And we have 3 different benchmarks efforts. One, if proofs, sponsored by the Ethereum Foundation. Another pi squared from runtime verification, and there is yet another one going on. So hopefully we can settle those differences with something fair and especially managed by a third party.
Why do you think adoption has been so slow, right? I think it's, at least everyone here, I bet would agree that it's the superior technology and the better way to do things, but why hasn't the market adopted that?
I mean, I think ZK is hard. Like, that's probably the simplest answer. For anyone who's tried to program a zero-knowledge proof, to write a zero-knowledge proof and implement one of these research papers, let alone write an application like a circuit on top, I think people start to realize that it's challenging. You know, I've started my research career in the ZK space in 2015, and now it's 10 years later, and we spent so much time building a DSL. It's a programming language called Leo, so that we can try to make it easier for new developers to be able to write this stuff without needing to know cryptography. And so, I think that is one aspect to it. I think the other aspect, which the previous panel also touched upon, is, ZK itself is hard. Like, it's scary. Like, there's concerns about under-constrained bugs. If you look at ZK Security's page, they have a list of with ZK VM vulnerabilities that they find. And so, I think that this is another aspect that people recognize, that you can't just kind of move fast and break things on this side of things, because the consequences are dire there. So it's about being methodical on the infrastructure layer, and then for the developers actually making it more usable.
Why hasn't Linux overtake Windows, right? And why hasn't RISC architecture overtake x86? Oh, wait, it already did, but not in the space of desktop computing, but in mobile computing or like edge computing, right? So I think because ZK P is hard, the technology needs a long time to mature, and the market already had other comparable technology kind of being the mainstay. So in order for you to do it successfully in marketplace, you have to find new markets. So that's something like I said earlier, is that I think for Ethereum, because it's the first to utilize rollup as a solution to scalability, it's hard for ZK rollup to provide similar security, similar performance. Even if you do, or even if you're a little bit faster, it's very hard to. It's the same thing as like Windows versus Linux, right? Even if you're better, but you have to be extremely much better. Even then, it's hard. So, but the game would be there are other blockchains, right? Not just Ethereum. And there are other use cases that go beyond just the simple scalability improvement for blockchains like Ethereum. And I think it's there that you'll find your 100-fold of marketplace for ZK VMs. So that's how I see the evolution of our ZK VM industry.
I feel like Windows versus Linux is all about marketing.
Exactly. Yeah.
To continue on that, I think it's also on the rollup side, as in ZK rollup, the early one, like ZK Sync, Polygon, ZK EVM, were built on ZK EVM. And ReZero kind of changed the game a year before, and it takes time to change a protocol. It's very risky. For the Beacon chain, for example, for Ethereum, the development was between 2018 to 2020 to launch the Beacon chain, so 2 years. And now we have the tool to go much faster, and we have way more ZK VM that are way more mature, that can just use Rust, but this didn't exist in the past.
I'll add one thing more, actually. While ZK is hard, writing ZK papers is easy. And every other month, there's a new ZK proof system, too. So like, I think for a lot of teams that are betting their entire company and their entire business on a proof system, they're probably waiting to see what the final form looks like. And yeah, that's an infinite wait time, too.
And so in the meantime, you have, optimistic rollup sort of winning the game, right? And as that continues and, sort of takes more and more market share, what does that look like in terms of a transition period?
I disagree that they're winning the game. I mean, they promised us, optimistic proof will make things easy, will make things fast, but we've seen in the previous panel, they are switching to ZK, fraud proofs.
Yeah, I think actually this will have a different way of incorporating ZK rollups into the whole market. For example, I'm looking into something more like a hybrid rollup kind, because one thing that people always kind of use as example that validity proofs, ZK proofs are better than optimistic is the 7-day dispute time, right? But you should see it like in both ways. For example, in some use cases, actually you need more than 7 days, right? I think in the beginning it's like more like 14 days, because using time as a security device is actually has a long history, right? Like for example, in the U.S., it takes around 14 days or 12 days for a check to, the maximum time to clear in the Federal Reserve network, right? So, but let's see some, use case, you have $10 million. You actually want, some banks or financial institutions, they want 30 days, right? I don't really need that money to be used or something. I just need to be, transferred, with absolute certainty and security. I need 30 days, right? So optimistic rollup actually don't really provide that because it's fixed on 7 days. And by hybrid rollup, right, you can have a very versatile solution to all these problems. You can have instant finality, then you have ZK rollup, rolled inside it, and then you have a flexible fraud proof for 7 days or. Okay, so basically the validity proof will kind of obsolete the 7-day, of course, but then you also have a 30-day kind of solution for certain use cases. So I think that's probably going to be evolution from these rollups as a solution.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add also that I have an open question. I think the verdict is still out whether for optimistic rollups these techniques are sufficient or adequate. I think it's almost like in the early days for those who've been around for long enough. TrueBit was trying to do kind of something similar of basically trying to catch or identify when someone was cheating or misbehaving. And I think that this is an unsolved problem. You can add a lot of monetary guarantees, you can add a lot of even ZK-based guarantees, but ultimately I think that is it's a cat and mouse game. You constantly have to evolve on that. I think when it comes to just ZK integrations, I think taking a step back, I think you're going to start to see a dichotomy between the L2 approaches versus the L1 approaches as well, because ZK integrations, on Ethereum, while they're nice, this is really I don't know. I'm gonna be controversial here. I think it's like adding airplane wings onto a car. It's you're trying to fit a model that was built well before ZK was even in the picture. And I think the advantage of starting new and starting clean today is to be able to build something that is highly optimized for the actual mathematics and the underlying architecture of what you're built on. And so, for example, unlike traditional systems, like in Solidity, when you write your bytecode, it gets run on a CPU, and that's one way to do things. But of course, for those in the ZK world, that these circuits compile down into polynomials that then get run in a proof system, and that's algebraic. It's not bit-based, and so those advantages get lost when you start to think about it from a pure Ethereum standpoint. And I would even challenge to say that integrations need to happen kind of more broadly in the entire ecosystem.
To be against your controversial take, if we reuse Windows versus Linux analogy, one of the greatest strengths of Windows is the backward compatibility and the fact that an application that you had 10 years ago still works today. While on Linux you have issue with glibc or lots of things, library that have changed the version, for example, libpng, libgpeg, it's a problem. So it's a double-edged sword. I think the backward compatibility is a very good strength of Ethereum, and that's we would lose all network effects of Ethereum if we remove that, and that impacts a lot Solidity design.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think from the DeFi standpoint, from the liquidity standpoint, what Ethereum has built is amazing. Like I think that should not be disrupted per se. What I hope is that people end up using this technology in other ways. For example, in identity or in gaming or in ML, AI. Like there's other ways to use the technology in crypto where it's well incentivized. But I think to your point, like I think what Ethereum has built is quite special.
I would actually go back to that put wings on the car thing, because I think that's exactly what I was talking about, spill out scenarios, that we're actually using ZKVM to build roll-up solutions for Bitcoin, which is kind of akin to the situation that you put wings on a car. Why is this necessary is that we have this, right? We have this thing. It's not just hard to build something from scratch. When you build something from scratch, it's better for new use cases, not the old ones, right? You don't build a new Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin has a lot of problems that I'm pretty sure over the years that even myself included want to build a better Bitcoin than Bitcoin. But then eventually Bitcoin is the best Bitcoin, right? So what you do is you try to just use technology to like sort of add wings to the car, but you don't like ditch the car, right? And going back to that, the technology actually is very interesting. To enable to kind of being able to put native transactions to Bitcoin that's not Bitcoin native, but sort of native to Bitcoin, but not Bitcoin native, is to use the interesting like technologies that were built over Ethereum. For example, you've probably heard on Ethereum, on Bitcoin, you would utilize something called BitVM, which is descendant from TrueBit and Arbitrum, right? So, and ZKP, right? ZKVM. So, this is the spill out, technology from Ethereum. So I would say that this is the thing that will happen is that you find new markets, new use cases. You add wings to existing rusty things, right? To like that.
I mean, going back to Ethereum, how do you think this affects the roadmap? Do you think that this is actually going to fundamentally change it as the technology progresses, or does the roadmap sort of stay the same and we just stay the course?
Well, I think Ethereum has tried many strategies in terms of scaling and being able to introduce new features. Now there's the push also with privacy pools as well. And ZK Tech has been at the core of their roadmap. When it comes to like the 5-year plan, I think there's a lot that's still up in the air. Personally, like I think that Ethereum will find its marketplace, but it will find a fragmented marketplace. So with all of the L2s out there, you already start to see it. I can't speak on behalf of the EF because I do not know what they think, but I bet that they're looking at this and saying we need to pull back some of this back onto the L1 because it also is a actual UI UX issue for traders and for users. So that's just my hunch on it.
So on that front, I think ZK and the killer application of ZK for Ethereum is actually solving liquidity fragmentation. So if we realize what's called real-time proving, so proving within 4 seconds, a block is 12 seconds, but at the 4-second mark, we start propagating a block so that it have enough attestation to be included in the blockchain. So if we achieve real-time proving through ZK, what can happen is that we pick a ZK rollup A, we have a ZK rollup B, and I can do a flash loan between A and B and do, let's say, arbitrage between USDC and ETH, all within a single block. And then the only limitation becomes the wallet UX. But this solves liquidity fragmentation. People would be able to buy an NFT somewhere, play a game with all their funds in one chain and nothing in the other, and everything is proven with validity proofs.
I have a plea for Ethereum foundations that don't enshrine too much, ZKP into the main chain. Don't enshrine RISC-V. Check out ETH Proof, that other solutions, Lita included, and like MIPS and other. It's thriving, and scalability is already a solved problem for Ethereum, right? It took years to get here. Don't just go back. Go back because you probably want to pump the token, right? Just follow up the achievements of technology that developed over the years, and let the technology spill out.
Yeah, I just want to go back to one thing you said before, Howard, before we wrap up, which is that the technology really can start being used much faster at the application layer. And I think that's sort of the promise that I've been most excited for. It's hard for me to get excited about the infrastructure layer. I assume you guys are going to figure it out and it's all going to work, and I just want a UI that makes it really easy. But I also want some of the application stuff, and I think that's been slow to be rolled out. I saw this week a bunch of different identity protocols. The self protocol is the one that I found the most interesting, where it's now using ZK proofs to let you say, I am over 21, right? My name is X, right? I am not on an OFAC sanction list. Where's the rest of it going to come and when?
Yeah, so I mean, this personally is something that's near and dear to my heart, is use cases beyond just finance. And ZK right now is at a tipping point. Just to give the audience context, while the technology was introduced 30 years ago in research papers, it was only in the past decade that it became practical enough for modern CPUs to even start generating proofs. And so that was when Zcash came about, for instance, and that was a very small circuit making a statement about a payment. In the last 5 years, you've now reached a point where the technology is starting to become fast enough for general purpose proving, and you're starting to see a proliferation of teams that are building for that. In terms of use cases that I find very exciting, it's really coming into the world of private smart contracts, and that's what makes, at least for us, Aleo the differentiator. We really believe in the private smart contract use case because, for example, in the identity example, we have this initiative called ZPass. With ZPass, the idea is that I can prove that I'm over 18 without revealing my birth date on chain. I can prove that I'm not on an OFAC sanctions list. I can prove that I'm a US citizen without revealing my citizenship to others on chain. But in addition to that, there's also on the gaming side of things. Today you can build a game like chess on Ethereum or on Solana or on Base, but the problem is you cannot build games that have hidden game state. Anything where you have information asymmetry, it does not work easily on a smart contract today. And for the cryptographers in the room, you may say, well, I could do like a commit and reveal scheme to make it work. You're going to add a bunch of block time, a bunch of gas overhead, and a bunch of just headaches for people. And so the reality is if you have private smart contracts, you can actually hide the opponent's board. You can play a game like Battleship, for instance, or you can play a game like poker where you need to hide your hand from the other players at the table. And so from a gaming standpoint, I think that is something that's really interesting. The last area that I would focus on is really on programs that require more than 10 seconds of runtime. And what I mean by that is Ethereum is like a mainframe. We're all time sharing block time right now. What ZK does is it lets you take computations and move it off chain and run it off chain for however long you need. It could be a minute, it could be an hour, it could be a day. And what that allows you to do is, for example, with AI, I could start to introduce classifiers in a smart contract now, run it off chain, give you some inference that says yes or no, and then publish the result on chain with no re-execution by the validators, and they can, in under 10 milliseconds, check that this inference was done properly by the machine. And so that opens the door for developers to far more expressivity. I think ZK is not just a TPS use case. I do think it's a developer expressivity and an opportunity for confidentiality and compliance.
Yeah, from a project that's on the front line, I would say that the magnitude of the speed up of these technologies, the ZKP, I would also mention like FHE are kind of much advanced than people realize. For example, it used to ZKP is on a magnitude of 6, like 1 million times slower. Now it's like around 1,000 or even faster. And the holy grail is like 12 seconds per block. And I would make a bold statement that from our point of view, we probably can reach like real-time proof this year. And with that, I think the proliferation of Web3 apps that utilize this technology would be a lot easier now.
Awesome. Well, with that, we have to wrap up. Really great getting to chat with you all, and looking forward to see what we're all building in the next year.